Today I'll be going over a new addition to the UI package, which is the damage indicator. The damage indicator is like it suggests. It will indicate where you have received damage from, and it will actually indicate all of the sources, and it should adjust your camera accordingly. So the setup for the damage indicator is actually very simple. I've prepared a couple of prefabs for you, but as you can see, the damage indicator is only made up of 3 scripts: the damage indicator system, player, and the indicator itself. So let's go ahead and first set up the UI. So let's go to damage indicator, and as you'll see here, it's in the pre-built prefabs, in-game visuals, damage indicator. And there's a damage indicator UI and then the actual damage indicator itself. So let's first drag this up to my index 0 scene, because that's I basically always want this to display no matter what scene has been dynamically loaded or not. And the damage indicator, this prefab is already built up for you, but what you need to do is you need to have this indicator prefab here, and the indicator prefab, let's have a look at it. The indicator prefab is very simple. We have a canvas group that it's going to have its alpha value adjusted from 0 to 1 to fade in and fade out the indicator itself, and it has a pointer on it. Now the position of the pointer is actually very, very important. So let's go ahead and say alpha 1 here. You'll see if we look at the position, it is exactly in the center. If it's anywhere from the left or the right, it can seem off when it starts rotating around, because it won't exactly point to where you have last received the damage. And this UI image is all included. But as you see, it's completely a non-interactable object. And what this is going to do is this entire thing is going to be rotating around where the last damage sender for this particular damage indicator is from. So basically you get one unique damage indicator for each unique damager. And then the holder, which is this is going to hold all of these dynamically generated damage indicator prefabs. When you take damage, it's going to spawn one, and it's going to be a child of this, and it's basically going to rotate around the pivot of this. So this pivot, again, it's actually just the entire screen. So when it spawns, it's going to be exactly in the center and rotate around the center of the screen. And then finally is the camera. And this camera can be manually assigned if you want to, but as you see here, I don't actually have it assigned. At runtime, it's going to automatically find it. So if I click play here, you'll see it automatically found the camera for me. What it's going to do is it's going to search for the third-person camera component, and then based on this component, it's going to search up and down the tree to try and find a camera component here. If it can't find one, then basically this system isn't going to work for you. You'll have to manually assign it, but that's pretty much not going to be a problem for almost anybody. And then we have our third-person setup here. Now, since out of the box, Invector is a third-person controller, I have it default to that, but there are add-ons you can make it a first-person controller if you want. So I give this option for you here if you want it to be a first-person view or a third-person view, and the damage indicator will change slightly accordingly because it's going to calculate the direction between either the player and the damager, or the camera and the damager. If it's a third-person setup, it's going to calculate it between the camera and the damager, because the camera is really the point that matters. So with that all out of the way, we have the UI set up, but now nothing is really going to report to it. We have to have our player reporting damage to the UI to say, hey, when I receive damage, here's the sender, here's the thing that I'm receiving damage from, and I want this UI to generate this damage indicator for me. So it's really quite simple. All we need to do is come to our player here, and on our player, we're going to add one component, and that is going to be the damage indicator player. So you'll see there's one option here, and it says only if not in camera view. So you have an option. You can say, if I receive damage at all, anywhere, I want this damage indicator to be displayed. Or you can tick this box and say, I only want to show the damage indicator if where I'm receiving damage from is not already within my camera's view. So first off, let's just show what it's like to always see it. So I'm going to click play here. I'm going to log in, and there's already this object here, so I'm going to run in and take some damage, and you'll see that it's responding accordingly. So you'll see it's always going to point to where I last received damage, and it's going to nicely fade out after a little bit. And so I can run back in there and take some more damage. And you'll see if I take damage again, it doesn't spawn a new one because this damage indicator is dedicated to this unique damager, and it will display that. And obviously you can change this image to be whatever you want, but that's just included for you. So let's see this at runtime. Okay, so now we've got this set up, so I'm going to go ahead and target, and he's going to take some damage. And you'll see that the damage indicator is following him. See, no matter where he goes around the screen, comes back on here, it's going to display that. And no matter how many times you take damage from him, the damage indicator is always going to be displayed for this guy right here. As you can see, it follows him around. So you can see setting up the damage indicator with the pre-built prefabs is fairly simple. The only thing, if you wanted to build it yourself, is you need a damage indicator system with a damage holder, and make sure that damage holder is the entire screen. And then your damage indicator needs to have a canvas group on it. And if you don't have a canvas group, it will be dynamically generated for you. The most important thing here is this damage indicator component. And let's open the prefab. And if you don't have any sort of image, it's not going to be really helpful. But basically, where you want this to point is you need it to be at the very bottom center of the screen. So pointing directly down, not this way, not this way, not this way, it needs to be down. So point it directly down, and then it will rotate according to that. And hopefully that gets you started, and you can design your own damage indicators, drag it in here, replace this according to whatever you want, and it should work out great.